So fans have opinions, as I'm sure you both know. Is there anything coming up in the second half, or even looking towards the next season, that you've had to change from a story perspective in order to make a really good adaptation for the screen?
Oh, yeah. It's hard to be specific about it, but there's changes all through it. The first half, second half, next season as well. You know, the first book, I thought lent itself really well to a straight-up adaptation. I could see, okay, this isn't that difficult. It's a relatively simple narrative in terms of its clear story, and we're going to follow these twists and turns along the way. The second book is more complex. It shifted point of view and voice and time, and it's much more political, and it goes to Paris and then returns to Scotland. So the challenges of adapting the second season are actually bigger than the first season in that sense. But in both cases, it's the same process. We start in the writer's room with the book version of events, the scenes themselves, lay them all out, and then say, all right, this hour is going to start here and end here. Now let's examine that, by itself and decide, okay, what's the arc of this episode? What's the character through line? And in that process, you start rearranging, you start changing things, but you're always trying to get back to where the book is taking you and preserving what the characters are really about. So, it's an ongoing process, but we only kind of make changes where we feel like, well, we've got to make that change in order to make the television structure work.
One of those changes is the interesting dynamic we're seeing a little bit earlier between Colum and Dougal.
Yeah.
Last night we saw that actually in the first episode. Really interesting stuff. This tension between them, is this something that, well, obviously we're going to continue to see it through the arc of the story, but is this something that you're going to really highlight moving forward to move the story? And for you, Gary, what are you doing in order to not give away too much about what Colum actually sees as a secretive man? He has to keep his cards close to his vest. Is he a character who really sees the future coming and is doing everything he can to sort of slow roll it, or is he actually not really understanding what's might be in front of him?
I think he understands, yeah. I think he understands that the support... See, this is very interesting. Not Colum and Dougal, but Gary and Graham have actually had the discussion, why would you support the Jacobites? And Graham, and as Dougal, he said, yeah, for Scotland, and very similar to Dougal, for honour, for Scotland. Colum isn't interested so much in sacrificing the future of the clan or the people for the sake of honour. He's a realist, and he understands what's going on historically. He understands the forces over the border, which are ready to come, are far superior than what we can muster. If the whole of the clans were united as one force, they would be an incredible force. But he knows that that's not the case. My God, they're always fighting each other. They're always stealing each other's cattle. They're never going to be a unified force because they have different interests. Politically, they have different interests. Now, what you have in microcosm with Colum and Dougal is a representation of that conflict which is taking place really, in reality, in a much deeper and wider scale throughout the land. And it's very interesting because I think that it leads to doom, and I think Colum understands. That's a short answer, yeah.
He's the practical one, and Dougal's the passionate one.
Yeah.
Sort of the yin and yang of the two halves of that personality, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm going to ask a question about Scotland. You're obviously very passionate. This is a huge love letter to the country. How have you seen that manifested back home?
Back home? The show just started to be broadcast recently. People have been clamouring for it for a long time. They've waited so long. So as the second part of the first season goes out here, the first part is just going out in the UK. What happened with me immediately was people started stopping me in the street and giving me notes about...
Really?
Yeah, I have to pass them on to you, so I'm going to do it now. Yeah, they would just tell you stuff. It was detailed stuff like Gillis's hair should be more fair, Jamie's hair should be more red, and it's absolutely outrageous, but I love it. But tell them about the hair. So there you go, I'm telling you now. Yeah.
I cannot talk about Jamie's hair.
Oh, God.
I won't ask any questions.
I just can't.
I promise.
I'm going to shave his head second season.
I have opinions, but I won't ask you about that. If we could change topics quickly to the penultimate scene at the end of season 1, the Wentworth scene. In your career, have you ever developed a story with that much emotional trauma and darkness?
Not in that way. I mean, it's a unique story that Diana gave us at the end of the book, and it's a challenging section to adapt. It was a challenging section to perform and edit. And we knew kind of going in, all right, that's going to be its own thing. We're going to have to spend real time and think about exactly how we're going to portray that and how we'll realize it on camera. So it took a lot of thought. We gave the cast extra time to rehearse with the director. The cast was just fearless. They were just willing to go any place and try anything and experiment and play and try to do different things. And then there's a lot of time in editorial deciding what we're going to show, what we're not going to show. At what point is it just gratuitous in the sense of you don't want to watch anymore, and at what point are you cheating the audience because you're shying away from the truth of what really happened? And that's a hard line. That's just sort of a judgment call you have to kind of just make as someone with an artistic judgment, and just say, okay, this is kind of where I think that line is, and that's sort of the way we played it. And I think I'm happy with it. I'm proud of it. I'll stand by it, and I think it's a really good finale for the entire season.
Great. One last question. This has been the Outlander moniker. It's been many, many months. Actually, it's a two-part question. Were you ever concerned that you were going to lose the fan base a little bit? And if so, has that colored how you might progress shooting the second half and what the release time on that might be?
Actually, I never worried about losing the fan base. I knew the fans had waited 20 years. They were going to wait a few more months. The general audience is a different thing. The general audience can kind of then get fickle and go away and get interested in something else. But then I sort of believed in, Starz said to us, all right, there is going to be this big gap for our scheduling, but trust us, we're going to do a big marketing and publicity. We will remind people the show is back, and they've been true to their word. So I feel like, we're going to bring all the people who enjoyed the first half of the season will come back. And there's probably a fair number of people who sampled the show during the Outlander who now are ready to watch the second half.
Marvelous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And as a fan, thank you for such a great adaptation.
Oh, thank you so much. I
Honestly,
appreciate
really,
that.
really marvelous.
Great.
Hey.
You're fantastic.
Well, thanks very much.
And
That's
I
very kind.
loved your whiskey.
No.